Hi everyone, on this video I will be discussing the different types of loops in Visual Basic. So the first thing that we will be doing is creating a console application for Visual Basic. So let's just name this project as loop and we'll be selecting the console application. So you can see that I am using the Visual Studio IDE 2017. So you can use any programming IDEs that could run Visual Basic as long as it will run on a manner that we are expecting. So the first thing is, why do we need to use loops? So why is it necessary to understand these kinds of looping structure? So loops are used to repeat certain instructions several times. So for example, we are asked to output numbers from 1 to 10. It's easy to just print the numbers 1 to 10. However, if we are asked to output numbers from 1 to 1000, it would require a lot of codes in a project, which it will be messy whenever we type it manually. So that's where loop enters. That is where the automation of loops in certain programming languages. So there are two types of loops in Visual Basic. So the first one is the for loop. So for loop has a syntax. Let me just comment it here. So for loop has a syntax of for. So for is a stored word for a certain purpose in Visual Basic. So the next one is the variable. So the variable will serve as a counter or will hold the number that currently is having the control loop. So the minimum value where the loop will start and the two stored word to indicate the sequence of the number or the range of the number. So next is the maximum number. So this will be the maximum number of the loop. Next is the step function. So the step serves as a number of increment per iteration. So we can set here number step. Okay, so to have a practical application about this, so first is we'll be using for. So for example, we are asked to output numbers from 1 to 10. So we could simply create a project and we could set a variable a. And next is 1. So 1 the minimum value, 2 and the maximum value. Let's say we will be having a maximum value of 10. So without a step function or without the step stored word, it will automatically have a increment of 1 per looping structure. So we could have an output of, we should expect 10 output lines. So for example, I need a I need an output. Okay. So we are expecting that this line of code, this line chunk of code will repeat 10 times. So let's just run this and let's just set a breakpoint so that it will not quit the moment we ended the program. Okay. So we are waiting for a result. Okay, so you can see here that the number or the console.write_line repeated 10 times. So this is the purpose of why we use loops. It's to repeat the same chunk of code in the times where we are setting it. And also, we could also use this for loop as, or we can output the number that is on the counter. So we can set here console.write_line the number in a, so using the ampersand for the string manipulation. So okay, so we are expecting the number is a 1 2 3 and so on and so forth. So let's just run it again. Okay, so you can see here that this is the number that is on the counter. So each iteration, it increases the number until it reaches the number 10 where the loop will end. So we could also use the step function on our next example. So let me just comment it here. Okay. So next is we will be using the step function. So where is the step function is used? So for example, since the default value of for loop, it increases or it increments a number of 1 for each iteration, but this time we could set it that it will increase a certain number where we have set it. So for example, for b is equal to 1, 2, 5. Since we want to expect numbers from 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, so we could set the number of iteration, or we could set the increment number. So we can add here 0.5. So we should be expecting numbers from 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5. So we just output it here. The number with step. Okay. So, okay. Okay. So, okay. So, let me just run this code. So, okay. So, you can see here that the value increases 8.5 each iteration. So that is where we use the step function. So I have discussed earlier that there are multiple types of loops, but in this video, I'll be discussing the do loop and the for loop. So let me just comment it here. So the next type of loop that we'll be discussing is the do loop structure. So the do loop, so the difference between for loop and do loop is do has a condition where it checks repeatedly. So for example, we will be having a do loop. So the syntax of do loop is something like this. So first is do, and next is we enter. So it will automatically create a a loop on the end of the function. So next is the stored keyword until. So do until, so which it indicates that the loop will continue, or this is the condition that we are setting. So let's say I is greater than, okay, so I is greater than 10. So you're seeing here that there's an error, meaning that the loop doesn't know what the variable I is. Unlike the for loop, we could automatically create a variable for that. However, in a looping structure, in a do until loop, it requires for the I to be declared. So first, we will be declaring I as an integer. Okay, so setting I is equal to 0, I is equal to 1, so that the loop will start on I. So we will just output it here. Okay. So let me just out numbers. The number in I. So we should expect the numbers from 1 to 10 as well. Okay. Okay. Oh, there's an ending loop. So, okay. So what happened here is the loop continued again and again for the reason that the do until loop keeps on checking is I greater than 10. But since we didn't have any control variable that will increase the I, so the loop is unending. So to correct this statement, we must think of a way to increase the number of I. So we could see here when I, so we could have to increment it like this. Okay, so let me just start it again. Okay, so you can see here that we already have a similar output for what is shown on the for loop statement. So So basically, so what's the difference between a for loop and a do loop? So the difference between them is the for loop has a certain number of range that we are setting, and the do until loop is a kind of loop which you will set a certain condition until you receive the output that you are be needing. For example, let me just show to you one by one how the while loop is processing. Let's just set the breakpoint here. So I'm clicking F10 to run this or to debug this code. Okay. So I'm clicking F10. So okay, so you can see here that the initial value of I is 1. So meaning this is the start of our loop. So next is it will proceed to the next instruction, which is the console write line. And then I is incremented by another one. So it will go to the loop, and since it is not yet, or the loop doesn't ended yet, so it will go back to the do until, which you can see it here. So okay, so the value of I is already 2, again, increment, and then 3. So once the value of I is equal to 3, yes, it's still okay. So it's still on the condition that we have set, and continuing here. So you can see here, I is already 4, and however, the loop will check do until I is greater than 3. Is still I greater than 3, but since I is already 4, it will end the loop. So that's how while loop works. That's how loops work. So we can set a condition, or we can set a certain amount of range. So that's it for this video, and see you on our next lesson.